The Nothing Phone 3 is a flop. In fact, 68% of people think there's something brutally wrong with it. But why is this? Well, you might first blame design because it looks super weird. But actually that's not it. You see, Nothing's main market is India. And in India, people are very value focused. So when the Nothing Phone 3 came out, there were 7 main things that made people think it was overpriced. Today I'll tell you those things and why I actually think they're wrong. Let's get into it. First up, the chipset. Last year's flagship phones like the Galaxy S24 used the Snapdragon 8 Gen 3. This year though, the Galaxy S25, which costs about the same as the Nothing Phone 3, uses the Snapdragon 8 Elite chipset, which is much faster, but Nothing didn't go with that. Instead they went with the Snapdragon 8S Gen 4, which performs about the same as last year. So yeah, you're paying 2025 flagship prices for 2024 performance. And to make it even worse, you can get the Poco F7 for half the price that has the exact same processor. Another complaint, the fingerprint sensor. There are 2 types, optical which uses light and ultrasonic which uses sound waves. Ultrasonic is way faster and more accurate. And for $800 this is what people expect. But Nothing went with optical, and it's fair to say people didn't take this lightly. The next complaint is one that people don't think about that much, the glass. You want a good quality glass to keep your phone well protected. On this phone, Nothing used Gorilla Glass Victus, which is worse than what people expect for this price. Nothing has been degrading the quality of their glass lately, so this is a step up from the Nothing Phone 3a Pro, but it's not quite what people expect for a flagship level phone. More importantly though, the front glass, and this is the worst decision of this phone in my opinion. You'd want a better protection on the front of your phone than the back of your phone, right? Well, Nothing didn't think so, because they put Gorilla Glass 7i on the front of the phone, which is even worse than Gorilla Glass Victus. And this is really surprising because phones like the Galaxy S25 use Gorilla Glass Victus 2, which is much better than this. So yeah, people were disappointed. But what about the camera? Surely there can't be anything wrong with this amazing triple camera setup with this new cool telephoto camera. Wrong. Because Nothing made the sensor size of the telephoto camera smaller than on the Nothing Phone 3a Pro. But this is a bit justified because Nothing said they did make better processing on the phone to make up for this. And on top of that, Nothing made a brutal mistake by putting an older version of USB-C on this phone. You see, there are 2 main types of USB-C that people use in phones. USB 3.2 and USB 2.0. And the difference between this is that USB 2.0 is just basic USB-C. You can just use it to transfer files and charge, and it's pretty slow. But USB 3.2 allows you to plug it into a display. And this is crucial for a new feature coming in Android 16, where you'll be able to use your phone as kind of like a Chromebook. And you see the problem here? The Nothing Phone 3 won't be able to have this, and it won't even be able to output display to a monitor. What are we doing here, Nothing? You thought I was done? No. Nothing has used really good quality screens in the past. I'm talking AMOLED 120Hz and really bright. But on the Nothing Phone 2 they introduced something called LTPO, which allows the screen to go to 1 Hz when not in use. For example, when having always on display on, you don't want it to constantly update. And this is really good for battery life saving. But on this phone that's not present. For $800, really Nothing? See, that's really surprising. And to round things out, let's just mention the design. This phone's probably not going to sell that well because the design is very controversial. You see, Nothing phones have always had a really nice design, which most people have liked. But on the Nothing Phone 3a Pro, they started creating more rebellious and controversial designs. For example, there was a lot of asymmetry in the Nothing Phone 3a Pro design, which is what people were very annoyed about. And that is present again here on the Nothing Phone 3. But here it is even worse, because they put one of the cameras right up to the edge. This kind of reminds me of the CMF Phone 2 Pro camera bump, which I also wasn't a big fan of. But I think now I really like it actually, because it kind of has this cohesive design with all the other design elements, but I'm sure a lot of people are going to hate it. In fact, most people. Now here's why people shouldn't be mad about this. To get it, you need to understand what Nothing is all about. Nothing doesn't just compete on raw specs, they focused on design and software, and they're one of the only companies doing something original in those segments. The design, unique, clean, minimal. No one else does this. The software, easily one of the best designed UIs out there. Satisfying sounds, smooth animations, and no bloatware. Compare that to something like the Poco F7, where you're bombarded with junk apps as soon as you turn it on. You're not just paying for the specs, you're paying for the experience. The clean software, the look, and the glyph matrix, which by the way is very expensive to produce. And also, if you get a Chinese phone, you're not getting 5 years of software updates. You're getting 2, and if you're lucky, 3. So yes, they made some trade-offs on things like the chip and the fingerprint sensor, but they did this to hit a fair price without compromising what makes a nothing phone a nothing phone. And honestly, who needs a Snapdragon 8 Elite anyways? All that being said, I think this phone will not sell as well as previous nothing phones, which have just been no-brainers, but I think a lot of people are going to love this design. And if you found this video helpful or enjoyable, make sure to give it a like, and if you want to see more nothing content in the future, subscribe. Thanks for watching.